Got a minute and a half to go, so this is an easy pace ride. 2 watts per kilogram. Keep it steady. Thanks for joining. This is the most fun you can have on a Monday. So we're going to go live also on Zwift Live by ODZ. 30 seconds. Oh, we have somebody who is brand new to group ride and just set up Zwift this morning. Morning, Pete. 10 seconds. Send
Hello.
a message here to the group, and we roll easy. So I'll take these first couple of minutes here to get the group together, send a message to make sure people know that this is a steady pace ride. For those not on Discord. And of course, I can't type. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Morning, Andy. We have some folks on Facebook as well. So this is Chat and Chill presented by Team ODZ every Monday. Steady pace, 2 watts per kilogram. And we take also this opportunity to chat about whatever is relevant for everyone here in Zwift, and training, nutrition, and other cycling topics. And today we have a special guest, which I'm very excited about. We have Nate Last join us today to talk about mental skills for endurance athletes. So a little bit of background. Nate is the owner of Mental Grit Consulting, and he earned his master's in performance psychology from the University of Utah.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So Nate has completed 6 half and 1 Ironman events in the past 18 months to find a deeper understanding of the endurance mindset. And Nate is also a Zwift rider, of course. He's here with us today. So welcome, Nate. Really glad you could join us. So I'll start by, and please everyone chime in,
Anybody
ask
there?
your questions.
Yep.
Type them in via Facebook
Are we the only
or
two?
on Discord.
Yeah. See it going? It's got audio going?
Can you hear me? Oh, All right, I'm back. So, did you hear anything that I said in the last 3 minutes?
Nah.
Okay, we'll go again. So, I'm very excited to have a guest today in our chat and chill to talk about mental skills for endurance athletes. His name is Nate Last. Andy's saying that they could hear me on Facebook, but I'll repeat for those of you on Discord. So Nate is the owner of Mental Grits Consulting, and he earned his master's in performance psychology from the University of Utah. He has completed 6 half and 1 Ironman events in the past 18 months, so he could gain a deeper understanding of the endurance mindset. And it's great that Nate is also a Zwifter, so he's here with us. And I don't know about you, but I have all sorts of questions. I was very excited when he accepted the invite to join this ride. So much of what goes on in the life of an athlete goes on in his or her head, right? So I thought it would be great to have him join. Please chime in with your questions, comments, type them in on Facebook, bring them in on Discord or in game. I'll get us started here. So Nate, welcome. Thank you for joining.
Thanks a lot, guys. Good to be here. It's definitely a coffee morning, so.
Every morning.
It's really early for you, right?
Yeah, we're about 5 a.m. over here in Utah.
Oh, wow. Well, appreciate you joining us. So, Nate, why don't you start giving us an overview of the athletes you work with? Perhaps, an overview of the age groups and disciplines, types of sports, etc.
Well, that goes, quite a big span, to say the least, in athletics as a whole. Work with athletes from 8 years old upwards of 85 years old, because as we all know, the whole mental side of the game of any side of athletics is apparent. It's a big part of it, to say the least. My main group of athletes that I'm working with right now is within endurance athletics, within Ironman, actually. Between the ages of 18 and about 45 or so. And these riders are, you can think of their experience between pretty much non-existent to elite athletes going to Kona. And into that competitive, elite athleticism. So it spans the range, to say the least.
Wonderful. So you help, essentially, if I were to tell somebody in a few words what you do, you help people develop the mental skills needed to perform at their maximum potential. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, you can think of this as, I'm not going to have anything to do with, being a magic pill. I guess people think about the mental skills like that sometimes, as it's this magic pill that can all of a sudden make you just the best athlete in the world. And I kind of think of it opposite, where, you have your physical potential. We do all the training, we do all this physical training, and, what the mind does is pretty much takes that physical training and optimizes it. So if we can, 100% train our mind, then we can 100% perform on race day with that physical potential.
That makes sense. So I'll ask a few questions here, and like I said, people are welcome to chime in and ask their questions too. In cycling, we hear a couple of famous quotes, right, that people use. Shut up legs is one of them. The Illuminati rule number 5, which is harden up. Is it that simple, though? Is it as simple as saying that to yourself? Hey, I just need to toughen up, or shut up legs. And how do you, could you comment on that? How does that translate into training for mental fitness?
I might ask everybody on, online today, like, has that ever worked for you?
Theoretical, right?
At a point, it has. Like, I've been to a point where I wanted to turn back and talking yourself out of quitting is the only thing that has gotten you to the next, the next mile or whatever.
Okay, I like that, and I like that shut up legs can be used for that instant moment, right? That singular moment where you're about to quit.
Yep.
But really, inside of mental, skills training, inside of the mental game, when it comes to like the elite level competitive, the competition at the elite status, you got to think that it's a lot less than survival and a lot more about, optimized, and it's a lot more about thriving at the top levels, where maybe at the bottom levels, at the beginner levels where, let's be honest, I'm at, it really is a lot more about surviving. So utilizing some of those, shut up legs and don't quit, and, a lot of those terms do help in that moment. But, then you get to an elite competitive athletic environment, and it's not about surviving anymore. It's about thriving. It's about, really being the best you can in that moment. So maybe those cues or those, types of lines, maybe they don't help at that stage. But I really do have to say it. This is all individual, and sometimes it helps in one person, and other times it doesn't help another. Theia did, and I mean, obviously you went to the CVS, I believe it was called.
CVR, yeah, the CVR World Cup. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the CVR World. Did you use anything like that inside of your own performance within CVR?
So for me, there were 2 days of racing. The Friday race was great. Everything clicked, from my legs to how I was perceiving the event and everything. So had a great day. On Saturday, I was so tired from Friday, and I had a hard time on the back-to-back races. So what I kept telling myself, I kept saying to myself, finish this one race, because there were 3 races back-to-back. Go for this one, go for this one. And on the first one, I went too hard at the beginning and I fell back. And I finished at the bottom of that first group for that first race. And that was a hard thing to manage mentally, because how do you tell yourself, well, yeah, you finished at the end and you have 2 more to go, but clearly you're not going to make the podium. So at that point, it was hard for me to come back being so tired. So
very little motivation, I'm assuming, yeah?
That's right. So what I told myself was, do the best that you can. You made the elite bracket. It's a great accomplishment for you, who has been cycling for 2.5 years. Do your best so that you look at your numbers at the end and you outperformed yourself. And that's what I kept telling myself.
Okay, so you told yourself that. Did it work?
It sort of worked. It got me through the races. But in all honesty, I didn't have the same mindset that I had on Friday.
Okay, so
I would say it got me through it. Yeah,
absolutely. You survived. And that in many ways that's human. we like to survive. We like to, especially getting into really, really difficult environments, we go into that mindset of survival, which works. I mean, it gets us through it, and it makes us, think in ways of okay, we can do this. We can believe in ourselves in that moment. But if we really think about the truly optimal mindset and the truly optimal performance that needs to be on major race days like that, even 3 or 4, 5 back-to-back races, always having that gumption, always having that thrive mentality is important. And the fun part about it, and I like to say this all the time, is we can do that. As athletes, we can train ourselves to have that mentality all the time. And we can train ourselves to pull ourselves out of that mentality all the time too. But the control of being able to put yourself in that mood or that mentality or that attitude and pull yourself out of it is what mental skills training is all about. It's that control over your mindset, if that makes sense. I mean, and if anybody has any questions throughout this, I know the topic it's very vague sometimes. So if anybody has any questions as we go through this, just let me know. But yeah, that's kind of the idea of, okay, we use these phrases that we go back to all the time. However, are they working for you, and are you using them purposefully? Would be something that I like to talk about all the time. D. Busey mentioned how it helped him in the moment. It helped him when he was about to quit. Okay, great. Use it when you're about to quit then, right? But if you're going to use it, in order to, when you're at the front of the pack, or you're feeling great someday, if you're just going to say it, then there's not really a purpose behind it. So I would say if you have those kinds of things that you like to say to yourself, those mantras, anything like that, then use them on purpose. Use them for a reason. So I would ask D. Busey over here, what are your favorite go-tos, and when would you use them specifically? Do you have any specific moments that you'd use those mantras?
Most of the racing I do in real life is very mid-pack. And so one of my mantras in cross racing about 10 to 15 minutes into a race is, why am I here again? This is so stupid.
The why
oh my
question.
Gosh, I think that crosses everybody's mind. Why am
I agree
doing
on
this?
that one 100%.
Because I'm in the 50-plus group, and there's no category, so no matter how fit you might be, there's always, the ex-pro racers and stuff that are always going to be, they've got 30 years in their legs.
Okay.
And I've got 8,
and that sounds super dismal. I'm going to be honest with you. If anybody hears that, it's like, why am I here again? I had that in my first Ironman. Like, why in the hell am I doing this?
Yeah, because it hurts so bad, and you just want to hang on, and, you're just in the middle.
You're right. So I might ask you, why are you doing it? Do you have your why?
I do it for the friends and the camaraderie and the fun and the fitness. And occasionally for the surprise.
For sure. Does that help?
Oh yeah, it gets me out there for sure.
Beautiful.
Sometimes just getting, in cross again, just getting through a course is, without bobbling or crashing is half the fun,
I like to call that the satisfaction factor.
Oh,
like
yeah.
some people aren't out there to compete. Some people are out there to prove something to themselves. Some people are out there for a variety of different reasons. The big thing that I like to say, no matter if I'm working with somebody who's a competitive athlete or just beginning, is know why you're out there in the first place, because you're going to ask yourself that question.
Right.
Why are you doing what you're doing? And when you know why you're doing what you're doing, you're going to have more power to do it. That's a phrase that comes up a lot in performance psychology as a whole, but knowing your why is still something that's important for all athletes to have. And that why you can come about that why in many, many different ways. And some people, they kind of have the top level why. They have that like, oh, I do it because I like it and it's fun. And it's like, great. But why do you do it? Like, really, like, dig into that. I have a cool little tool that I like to use called the 9 levels of why. And I might ask everybody out there to do this as well, at some point in time, is, first ask yourself why you're doing it. And then ask yourself why that's important. And then keep going down. Well, then why is that important? And then you're going to answer it. And then you're going to ask yourself, well, why is that important to me? Right? And you're going to go 9 levels down. And at some point in time, you're going to start digging into something that is really, really effective and emotional for you. Which that effect that you're feeling from that 9th deep level inside of you, if you start feeling something when you start talking about your why, you're starting to find something that is powerful, that can be used, right? Go out there and I want to have fun. Great. Well, why do you do it? Well, I do it because, I want to find some satisfaction and prove myself to, myself. Okay, that's a little bit deeper. Well, I want, that's important to me because, and then you keep going further and further and further and finding this really important thing to you that's individual, right? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Part of it.
Peeling the onion.
Part of it for me is in general, can I do better than I did last time is a big motivator, whether it's a century ride or a race of some sort or whatever. I've got an annual mountain bike race I do, and every year I've taken, 7 to 10 off my time. So obviously that won't go on forever, but it's a good motivator to get as fit as possible for it and do your best.
Where do the beer hand-ups rank, Bussy?
You know what? I've seen people get beer hand-ups in cross races on national TV, so it happens.
Yeah, that's a big motivator for me. Free beer.
So could I then ask about the relationship of that, right? Peeling the onions, getting to the deeper levels of why and pain. So is it, because really what we're doing is managing, and I don't know if managing is the right word, right? The pain that you're feeling at that moment, so you can overcome that, the physical pain. So could we talk a little bit about the relationship between those mental skills and pain? Is it
so
about...
we're talking...
Yeah.
So we're talking more about what's the relationship between knowing your why and being able to push through pain? Is that your question?
Yes. Yes.
Big topic, my goodness. There's been, volumes and volumes written on the subject. I'm wondering if anybody out there has any answers to this right now. And I'll talk to, based on my own perception and my own philosophies, but I know there's a lot of great books out there. I know Fitzgerald, he wrote a great one called How Bad Do You Want It? And there's a lot of great, material in there. But what do people do? What do you guys do right now in order to push through pain, in order to fight, that fatigue, in order to kind of get through those, and push, and really, I'm talking about like getting to that moment where you have pain and you perceive all of this like just nasty pain, and then being able to push through it. What's worked well for you in the past? What have you done in order to kind of make that happen? Yeah.
I'll offer mine, and I'll be curious to hear from others. Jason, just real quick.
Okay.
I embrace it. My philosophy is I embrace the pain. I acknowledge it, I embrace it, and I accept that it's going to be there. So, Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, I think being a coach, I'm about to start an interval. Being a coach on the Endurance Lab, what we try to train our athletes is during our workouts, we're hoping that we're putting you up to a very specific amount of work so that you can kind of reach back to that saying, I've done this in training, I've worked harder in training, I've been in more pain in training, where the rides, the races seem more under control. And with the right amount of effort, pushing people, whether it be on the trainer or on their training ride with specific goals, can definitely give people the arsenal to be able to take with them so that they're able to use that on the course, saying, I've been in harder places than this, I've gone 2 minutes longer than this, I can do this, I can finish this.
No, and I love that training mentality right there of being able to train harder in training than you do in racing, and get yourself used to that pain and be able to really prove to yourself. And I think this is where confidence comes from. I think this is the best facilitator of confidence. So if you're looking for confidence, this is what you do.
So
you work.
Jumping on Jake, let's say. Sorry, I'm in the middle of the interval finishing. Training.
Good Lord, you guys.
It's all about, prepping for the race, because we look at it as you always fall back on your training. There's no such thing as rising to a performance, because you're not trained and ready for it. There's nothing to rise to.
You're totally right, and that's the mentality that you have to have. It's the people that come into races thinking that all of a sudden they're going to have a great, spectacular race without doing the efforts. Right? That's a problem. That's a major problem in athletics, that they feel like they can just not do the work, to say the least, and then have this spectacular, fantastic day because that's all they hear on the stories. Right? that's what people hear, is those stories of somebody all of a sudden having this miraculous race on social media, and then all of a sudden they see themselves doing that, which is a problem.
You can't dig into the pain bank if it's already zero.
Beautiful. I love that quote.
Personally, I prefer when people try to rise to the occasion because it makes them easier to beat.
Wait, say that one more time. What was that last piece?
That's good.
I like when people try to rise to the occasion by fall back on their training because it makes them easier to beat.
Oh, way. Oh, yeah. I love those because those are the people that go out way too hard in the beginning, right? And then you, like, pass them up, and you're like, you had this big attitude at the beginning of the race, and now you're falling behind everybody. So, sucks for you.
Hey, Nate, can we pick on that topic a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how about those athletes that we see sometimes that are doing great in a race? They're leading, they're in the front, and then they're close to the finish line, meters from the finish line, and they just completely blow up. What is that all about? How if they came this far, right? What happens? Is it can't I can't believe that that's physical fatigue. Any insights on that?
You know, and I'm going to be very honest with you. I've never truly looked into that effect. It is a miraculous idea, right? That happens, and we see it constantly. We see bonking. We see people hitting their physical limits, and maybe, and that's kind of what I would say in this situation. And by no means, again, am I an expert in this specific topic here. But I would very much say that person reached their physical limit. I would say it's the body, and they shut down. And I would commend them for that, because very, very few people can take their body that far. Very, very few people can mentally, and that's that physical potential part of that I'm talking about, is, okay, you do all the training, you're physically ready, but you know, do you have the mind to support that body of yours? Do you have the mind to support your training that you've done and that body that you have? And, you know, being able to, you know, fully optimize all of that physical potential that you developed is what mental skills training is all about. But I don't know, what is everybody else's opinions here? This is an interesting topic as a whole. If you ask me, why does that happen? Is it mental? Is it physical? Thoughts?
Could be both. I mean, I've had it where, you know, people who just never actually ever really push themselves really, really hard in a race, they'll push themselves just that 1% too hard and earlier, and then they can't recover because they mentally have never been able to go really, really that deep in a race. Then they might do it for 200s or 400s, but not extended time. And other times they just dug so deep so early and pushed the limits, and they just completely implode.
Yeah, I agree with that one. And heck, if you're pushing that 1% on race day that you end up pushing, and that's why I love races. I mean, heck, it pushes us to do things that we never thought we were capable of. You know, and if we're talking about specifically the elite level here, where, you know, they're Olympians and they end up bonking, or they end up just crashing at the end. I mean, we looked at the two twins. What are their names? I forgot.
The Brownlees, the brothers. Yeah.
The Brownlees, and the one, you know, the one Brownlee brother, he's in second place or first place, and he is done. And that guy has more experience than any of us put together. All of us on Zwift today put together. I mean, those guys put so much time and effort into it. And I personally, I don't think I could say that was mental. You know, him at the Worlds. You know, going down like that. But at the same time, maybe it was. I really don't have a lot to say on this topic. I apologize, but it's just an interesting idea. I agree.
I think a tool to use is kind of to compartmentalize it. You know, if you think the whole event, it's too daunting. But 1 mile at a time, 500 meters at a time, and then you get to the end and there's nothing left. You know, and you've used it all up.
Kudos if you can do that as well. I really do say that. If you can bonk, if you can get yourself to go so hard that you die at the end and you can't walk and you can't feel and you just hurt, kudos. Like, really. And that goes from beginners to experts. It really does. And that's just one day that you're able to push yourself. I might talk to that topic here really quick, the idea of compartmentalizing, of following the process rather than looking out the outcome. That's a big tool that we use within mental skills training is training ourselves to be present, training ourselves to be in the moment. Rather than so focused and putting our attention on outcomes, on the end of the race, on beating somebody else, this, that, and the other. Because, I mean, let's be honest, that whole idea of thinking about the outcome is very motivating to a lot of people. And that whole idea of beating somebody else is very motivating to somebody. But in endurance sports, it's not about being motivated in a moment. It's about being very, very motivated and very, very focused throughout the entire race. That's what wins championships. And we know that, across the board. So that whole idea of, I mean, if you're going to train yourself to do anything, and we can, within Zwift on the road, you're thinking about kind of the mental skill side of things, you can train yourselves to be more present just by asking yourself, maybe every 10, 15 minutes, where are you at? Are you present? Are you here, or are you thinking about the top of the mountain? Are you engaged in the moment? Are you engaged in turning those pedals mentally and physically, or is your mind somewhere else? Are you here right now? Are you present?
That's great.
And
I love that.
Yeah, that is a tangible thing that I work with every one of the athletes I work with on. That is super, super effective, not only in training, because you become more effective inside of practice and in training, but also inside of the race, is how long can you stay present for throughout that race.
So Nick, do you find that some athletes have a quote-unquote easier time doing those things and others don't? And that might even go a little bit into how much of that is from the person in terms of innate ability versus trained. It's the are you born with it, or do you learn? How would you comment on that?
The whole nature versus nurture argument. Right. That's a fun one. I do have my own opinions on this, and this is very much, again, a philosophy of my own, but I truly believe that talent is overrated. If you ever read that book, you'll understand. If you haven't, go read it. It talks about how the best in the world, and we're talking elite athleticism here. We're talking top of the top. Okay, at the top of the top, you might have those people that have that innate ability. But when it comes to kind of middle of the pack stuff, it really is more about work. It's about doing the training. It's about everything that needs to happen in order to get to where they want to go. So in my mind, personally, I feel like anybody can reach the top with enough work. But that's my personal opinion. That's just my personal belief. If you believe that, that's awesome. That's the kind of belief that we like to see. But sometimes I think that argument keeps a lot of people back. Oh, I don't have the physical. I don't have the family history. I don't have all of that.
Right.
And it's just like that really sucks if you have that mindset. Like, that is not an elite level mindset right there. However, has it been easy for people? Absolutely. And you got to look back to their entire existence up to that point, though. Do they live in a family where exercise is prevalent, or did you come from a family where exercise didn't have anything to do with it, and you just started at 13 to 15 or even 40 years old, right? But as an individual, you got to think of, well, if you're looking at somebody, you got to think of how much history is behind them regarding where they're at. You look at J-Flow. I mean, that guy's a banshee. Let's be honest, aren't you, J-Flow?
Easy. Absolutely no talent too. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. Totally overrated, J-Flow. Totally.
Yeah, J-Flow sucks. If anyone saw his FTP test.
That was ridiculous. But even we could use that as an example here. Like, I remember thinking when I was watching, and yes, I was watching J-Flow, just so you're aware.
Oh man.
But it was so easy to compare myself to him. It was so easy to go, he's got my body type. He's just about as big as I am. And he's pulling 350 watts? Like, holy crap. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, and then I'm like putting myself into this like negative mindset, and I started catching myself in that and going, you know, it's not about comparisons, and I'm a year and a half into this whole endurance sports thing. But I think as athletes, we can easily get caught up in those comparisons a lot, right? And those comparisons, they don't help us in any way, shape, or form, because it's about our story. It's about our work. It's about, you know, the amount of experience that we have, versus looking at somebody else and saying, oh, they have it all. So if it comes to arguments, I really do believe that, yeah, you can work your way to the top. Absolutely. In any way, shape, or form. Some people may have the X factor, to say the least, where they were built up in a family and in an environment where that's all they did their entire life. And look at you know, Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods started at the age of 2 years old with a putter. With, you know, his dad was a coach in golf. The guy did everything in terms of golfing from the age of 2 years old all the way through. And I mean, that's a big reason why he is so successful in what he does, is because he has so much time and deliberate practice and experience inside of that sport. Does that make sense? I hope that kind of provides some perspective there. I know there's a lot of vague answers here. There's not really any super tangible things, but there's a lot of different philosophies. What is everybody else's ideas here? I'm interested.
I agree.
Go ahead, David.
I just said I agree. Jason's a beast. That's all you can say.
Yeah. The comparison one is very interesting topic, I think, because we're out there, we're on Strava, we're on Facebook, we're looking at everything, we're saying, well, I'm competing against them, look at their power. So there's two things, right? There's one where you look at your competitors and you strategize, and then the other side of it is that inevitable comparison and putting yourself down for it, which, yeah, that's, I'll take that one home, Nate, for my own work here. So really good topic.
Yeah, I always, you know, working with athletes, that always comes up, especially when it comes to endurance athletes, because it is very much about comparisons, and that's what people care about. That really, I mean, every time you get done with a big race, they always ask you the first question: how'd you do? Right? And they're expecting the outcome. Like, did you win? Well, and that's what they care about. And as humans, that's what we like. We love when people care about what we've done. We are attached to it. We get a high off of when we have attention from people. So when the people around us are perceiving the most important thing is the outcome, we start thinking outcome. But the fact is, outcomes and thinking and engaging in outcomes, that's not the stuff that works best. That's not performance. Performance is process. Performance is in the moment, is moment to moment practice, moment to moment training, moment to moment racing. That's when people do their absolute best, and that's been proven time and time again. I mean, we've heard about the zone. I mean, everybody's gotten into the zone at one point in time in their life. Well, most likely when you hit that zone, there was very, very little outcome expectation, outcome attention inside of that race. I'm assuming, and I can probably prove this in many ways, shapes, or forms, and I can just going back to that moment, whatever that moment might be for you. But think about where you were at, when you were able to hit that zone kind of performance, that zone mindset, where you didn't remember anything that you did. You just raced. That's a great place to be. But that place is harder to get to if you're thinking about outcomes, if you're worried about, comparisons. That's a deep topic. And everybody has a different and individual experience with that. Which is where the whole mental skills training comes into play, as you get individual with the athlete and you're able to kind of suss out those really deep experiences and train them on an individual basis.
My philosophy is what hurts you makes you stronger, both physical and mental.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%.
I got to punch here in a minute. I just want to offer one thing. I mean, you're dead on, Nate. Because if you're thinking about what's going on, like in the race specifically, who's in front of me, how far back am I? You're losing perspective of what's going on, and that starts changing what you're doing. Vice you racing your race. And in endurance sports, you do an Ironman. If you worry about someone being 40 seconds ahead of you on the swim, and you punch it 3 miles into the bike, then you're kind of tubing yourself the rest of it. You're not
bingo. Yeah, and I might add, how many times do you deliberately train that ability to become more process focused when you're training? Right? That is the mental skill right there of staying in the moment. How many times are you deliberately training that when you're actually in practice and training? And that would be my challenge to everybody here. It's like, okay, we know that being more, focused in the moment is the best thing that we can do. Well, how can we actually train that maybe on Zwift? When we're working, how can we get better at being more process? And I might ask you to just go out and, take a day every week, inside of your training intervals, inside of your training plan, and dedicate one day of that, of that training plan to staying process, staying focused on the moment to moment stuff. And if you find yourself fading away and kind of thinking about other things and kind of not being engaged in that moment, that's okay. That's fine. It's not okay to stay there though, right? It's not okay to continually, see yourself with comparisons and outcomes and all that stuff. It's not okay to stay there. It's okay to be there because we all get there. We all think that way sometimes. We all kind of get distracted by all those things. However, if you're going to be your best self and you perform at your highest potential, then you need to come back to that process. You need to come back to the to the engagement in the now, in the moment.
Do you actually use any sort of hypnosis elements or neuro-linguistic therapy with any of your athletes, especially for endurance?
So with endurance, I do use a lot of mindfulness practice. I haven't necessarily gotten into hypnosis specifically yet. I have seen a lot of great research within hypnosis and how it affects performance. And honestly, if you look at the science behind meditation, behind hypnosis, behind mindfulness practice, they're all, and I might get shot for this, but I believe that they're very similar. They're very pretty much the same thing. We're all diving into that subconscious and being, in that moment. And there's a variety of methods to do that. We can do that in yoga. We can do that, getting into that very mindful space through hypnosis. We can do it through meditation. We can do it going 75 miles an hour, on a downhill, when you have to be so focused because you might die. That you have to be so in that moment, you might die, and you literally, the environment creates that for you. So do I use hypnosis in my own practice? Not right now, but I hope to at one point in time, because that's just another modality of kind of working with athletics and athletes and their minds. Some people believe heavily in that. Go ahead.
Question about hypnosis, and I'm not as familiar with it. I've heard of it, of course, but isn't that a passive thing versus mindful meditation, which is more active, or is that a misconception? So in hypnosis, in other words, hypnosis, somebody's doing it for you. So, I think I'll go for that. And I would agree with that. That philosophy right there of having somebody doing, something for you, doing the work for you. It's helpful. Let's be honest. Let's say that. It's very, very helpful. However, is it the best for the athlete over time? Do they need help, managing their emotions and managing their mindset, and training that for themselves? Do they need help doing that? Or do they need to train themselves to be able to do that better? Right. And that's the big question. And that's why I don't use that in practice, is because I don't have a ton of experience and have my own philosophies and way of thinking about hypnosis at this point in time. I'd rather have the athlete work through a problem, work through, a subconscious, block, a mental block, whatever it might be,
themselves and have their own revelation about it and make their own decisions than going the other direction on hypnosis, and diving into them and pretty much telling them to get rid of it. Because I feel like that's it's a lot more effective when the person does the work, when the person has that realization, when they make the choice. Because that choice that we have, I mean, that's the most powerful tool in the world, is choosing and being deliberate about something. Finding it out for ourselves. I mean, you know as much as I do that you can't tell anybody what to do. Theia, go harder, go longer, go faster. Okay, coach. Right? and that's going to work really well. Again, in that moment, that's going to work really well. However, does it extend the entire race? Is that going to motivate you, in the last 5 kilometers? And lo and behold, many times, most people are finding themselves failing, when that motivation is coming from an external place, rather than from that personal reason, that why that they have, that intrinsic motivation that they have. So, man, we're diving into like 1,000 different topics here. I love it.
But I can see how they're interrelated, though. We went back to the whys, right? So it's all within. Well, could we maybe get a very practical example? So I know somebody, an athlete, who absolutely will not do any more FTP tests because
that's a friend of yours, right?
Oh, yes, very close friend. So that person just absolutely won't do it anymore. That's it. It's like, I'll call that a mental block, as somebody who's not an expert. How can we? And this is like, FTP test is so hard. Can we talk a little bit about an FTP test? What do you do with something like that? Any tips? Any comments, really, or recommendations?
If you like racing, I don't know what races they're on, but it's happened to me twice where I've been in a race on Zwift, and then it automatically changes your FTP. It upgrades you. Now that's a fun kind of FTP rather than plugging out 20 minutes.
True. So the point here, I guess, goes back to not just an FTP test, but a hard training session. You're by yourself. It's dark out. You're in your basement, whatever, doing that very hard workout. So what are some of the thoughts to have at that point?
Okay. So there's 3 things that I would talk about here, and we've already talked about one of them, and that's that idea of confidence. When I first completed my first FTP test, I didn't have any kind of experience whatsoever, and I blew myself up in the first 10 minutes, as most people do. So we want to be confident when we're performing in any way, shape, or form. We want to be as confident as we possibly can be, and confidence comes from experience, period. So the first thing that I would say is do a lot of them. In the first 2 or 3 years, do as many, as once every month or once every month and a half. I don't know what a physical coach would say to that, but from the mental side, if you want to truly have that confidence within the FTP, then you're going to want to do it a lot. And you're going to want to, experience it a lot. So that's the first thing that I would say. The second thing that I would say is make decisions before the decision needs to be made.
Absolutely.
Right? So this is one of those that it's going to be difficult. You're going to face that little demon inside of your head that says you can't do this. Okay, why don't you make the decision now about what you're going to do about that moment? Right? That's going to come. So what are you going to do in order to kind of move through that, in order to make that decision? So a lot of people I talk about inside of races, inside of FTP tests, whatever it might be, when that moment happens, what are you going to do? And that's a lot of the mental skills right there is, okay, just do something. Don't just sit in the suck. Don't just be in that moment where you're just like, I hate everything. That's great that you're there. I mean, and every athlete gets there. It's the best athletes it's what do you do when you get to that moment? And when it comes to elite athletics and elite mindset and elite mental skills training as a whole, I mean, really at that elite level, we're working through, how many times can we get you into that suck and allow you an opportunity to get out of it? Where at the beginner level, we're more thinking about, okay, I mean, let's actually do something. What do you want to do about, you know, this place that you get into, or this negative self-talk that you have? And then they can choose what they do. You know, maybe they shift their focus to their process, you know, really turning those pedals. Maybe they shift their focus towards, you know, that internal breath, because that's something that's helpful. Maybe they shift their focus to everything that's around them, right? I mean, you can do a lot of things when you find yourself in that negative space. So that's the second one, would be, you know, choosing before you get there. Choosing your response to something that you know is going to be hard before you get to that response is going to make it a lot easier. And lastly, and this goes back to the whole idea of what endurance sports is, it's not about force. It's about flow. It's not about pushing and jamming and going as hard as you possibly can in one moment. It's about getting into that moment and getting at a high, you know, high power, a high effort level, a good attitude, and staying there. And being able to do that is very much a skill. And I think that's something that we can always train. So if you come at an FTP test like thinking, you know, I just got to just really just crank this out and just really force it and go after it really, really hard, you know, you're always going to perform less than you would if you're more about, okay, I'm gonna ramp really well. And J-Flow did this so well, and I think that's why this is such a great example, is that he started, I mean, if I remember right, about 2 or 3, that's funny, 329 or so, and then he started to ramp, you know, upwards of 350, and then by the end he was at 400 watts, and he was holding it, right? And that's like really, that's the greatest way of going about it. But that's not only a physical strategy, that I feel like was his mindset. And maybe J-Flow, you could talk to that. What was your mindset going into the FTP test?
Yeah, so if I typically teach and preach, and example is breaking it down into different parts, like you said, and being able to rise to that occasion for each one, and being able to know what your body can take. So again, taking multiple tests is definitely worthwhile. And for me, I broke it into 4 pieces with wattages from my last test, and then wattages that I wanted to hit this time. And then so I just used my lap counter to be able to keep myself in check for the first 10 minutes. And then the last 10 minutes is pushing. So really 10 minutes is not a whole lot of work for us to do. But yeah, just having a sign, what I feel like is a more, I guess, laid out approach on how you're going to do it versus how you feel. Kind of let something else take over. So a lot of people will reach out to us to give them that, because to just give them that goal to hit, because they won't push themselves that far. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I put it out.
I like that, you know, and as somebody with very little experience, and I mean I've been in this for the endurance sports at least for 20 months now, and you know, from going from a beginner to now a competitive athlete inside of triathlon and working inside of, I by no means at any kind of level of an elite athlete or even an A or B category. I'm still in a C category right now, but that's my journey, right? And I think that's something to be said, is you got to keep yourself on your own journey. But having said that, going into Zwift and utilizing Zwift races, I push myself way farther than I ever thought possible inside of Zwift races, and my FTP is always going up. Having said that, I use that FTP, you know, when I'm doing my FTP rides or my FTP tests, I use that as my new limit, because I still haven't found my physical limit yet. I honestly can say that. I like to use Zwift to help me find my limits, especially within racing. So for all the beginners out there or the intermediate riders out there, utilizing something like a game like Zwift to help you find those limits, I mean, that's going to push you further than anything. And then utilizing that number as, okay, I did that once, I can do it again. That not only pushes and breaks any kind of mental barrier that you might have regarding any kind of power that you can pull, but it also allows you to grow and push forward and move forward. So love the physical strategy, but I really have to say, I mean, it goes back to that experience. You have to think about how many times has J-Flow done a FTP test. And I can only think hundreds. hundreds and even thousands, right, of times that you've done an FTP test, and you're good at them now. Some people are going to get good at them really quickly because they figure out a good way of going about things. Some people, it takes them years and years and years to, really do a good FTP test and to really grow in that FTP. But I would say that just keep going, follow that process, keep moving forward with that idea.
And very much an individualized personal process. Again, going back to it's your journey. Yeah.
Extremely. And that's something that I really want to just harp on with anybody listening today is you've got to keep it personal. You've got to keep it individual. If you're comparing yourself to other people, that's not helping. Keep it on your own journey. And if you can keep your focus there, you're going to see yourself grow a lot further than otherwise.
That's awesome. So Nate, how about some, and this is a topic that has come up in the last couple of weeks with Zwift Academy, etc. And we talked about races a little bit. How about pre-race anxiety? So we talked about being confident and having confidence in yourself. What are some of the tools that people can use for pre-race anxiety?
Breathe. My goodness, just breathe. How many people have found themselves breathing through their shoulders before a big event? Like literally you're heaving. Anybody?
Absolutely.
You might be doing it and not be aware of it either.
Yeah, and that's another big part of mental skills training is like, okay, you first got to be aware. I mean, that's mindfulness practice at its core is awareness, acceptance, and action is the whole practice of mindfulness. But and I might ask you, anybody out there, if you guys are doing an event, keep an eye on your breath. If you're going to put your attention anywhere, put it on your breath. And this is very natural and very human, we have an instant response to when things get crazy and chaotic and those anxieties are going up, those energies are rising around us. We have a natural tendency to start breathing through our shoulders. Interestingly enough, when we breathe with our shoulders and we're, up and down and our chest is heaving up and down, we're only oxygenating about a cup of blood per breath. Where on the other hand, if you start breathing through your stomach, right, and when you inhale, that stomach pops out and you're dropping that diaphragm, right, you're oxygenating a full liter of blood per breath. So that's why you have that kind of that dizzy feeling when you have the big, starting a big races and you get really, really anxious. Well, that anxiety only increases because you're not getting enough oxygen to your brain and to your muscles. Which leads to really bad things. Where on the other hand, if you just calm down, relax, like be in the moment. And when I say relax, all I'm saying is breathe. Take deep breaths from that stomach and just be in that moment. Stop thinking about the end of the race, because I know everybody does that at the beginning of all races, right? Stop thinking about all that and start thinking about where are you at right now. Well, you're at the beginning of a race. What's the best thing that you can do for yourself right now? Well, you can breathe. You can put your attention on things that help you, things that are helpful for you, whatever they may be. So there's three things that people mostly come to me for that I see most of right now. And that's pre-race anxiety, how to control emotions, that anxiety piece, right? Confidence and motivation. How do I develop confidence in myself? And I need more motivation within my, my sport and training, whatever that might be. So all three things that we work with.
I'm so glad that this is being broadcasted, so I can go back and listen to it again. So much good stuff here, Nate. So many good things to think about. It's been extremely helpful. I'm really glad that you're able to join. We have about 2 minutes left. Any closing comments?
I would just say thank you. Thank you to everybody, joining us today, and thank you ODZ and Theia for having me on. I really am passionate about the mental skills game and sports psychology as a whole, and being able to apply that and train people, I think is one of the biggest passions that I have in my life. I would very much say that keep it individual as a whole. If you're a beginner, if you're getting started with all this, or even if you're not necessarily competitive, that's okay, but I'll always realize that it's your moment, it's your race, it's your athleticism, and it's your why. Always come back to that why. And if your why isn't synced up with your thought patterns, with your mindset, if what you're doing and what you're thinking about isn't about that why, then you might want to shift that focus. You want to shift your focus back to something that does go along with why you're doing what you're doing. Because again, if you know why you're doing what you're doing, you're always going to have more power to do it. And everybody's why is individual. So figure out your why and move forward from there. But if anybody has any questions or would like to get in touch, I always do a free session for anybody who has interest in mental skills training. We always, have that free online session. I do it online, so it's accessible and available to everybody across the nation. I work with athletes across the nation right now, and it's really cool to hear everybody's stories. So even if you want to get in touch, you can jump on my website, www.mentalgritconsulting.com, and you can sign up for a free session there. And we can talk a little bit more on an individual basis because, let's be honest, the mind is very individual, and we want to keep that on an individual basis because, there's a lot of things that you can do, but it's very dynamic. So keep that in mind. But yeah, you can get in touch with me anytime. That my number's up on the screen as well, 801-368-7564. You can go ahead and text me anytime. Jump on me with Facebook. Follow my Facebook page. I got some great tangible training tips on there as well.
Some great articles on the blog page of your website too.
Yeah, I got every day, every week we have great new things that you can kind of engage in. If you follow the newsletter, we send out our most popular stuff on a weekly basis, monthly basis as well. So you just if you want to get engaged in the whole topic of mental skills training and you want to do something for yourself, there's some good stuff there. So that's what we want to provide.
Yeah, for those writers, Team ODZ, really quick, we will be bringing a good amount of what Nate's been talking about onto our Facebook page as well. He's a great partner. We definitely think it's really important to bring your racing and training or riding to the next level. So look forward to some of that. And for those in the endurance lab, we'll be integrating him into the lab pretty soon too. So definitely really exciting news for Nate and the team as a whole.
Perfect. Thank you so much again.
Appreciate you guys.
It's been one. Have a great day, everyone. Cheers.
Matt, you just got on. You missed the whole show.
I know.
We have to do it over again.
Way to go, Ross. Way to go, Ross.
I ruin everything.